Do you ever experience moments of frustration, doubt, uncertainty, maybe even dread around returning to places you've already been? Coming back into a practice, revisiting a relationship, just doing something that you've done before, having to come back to it or adopt it again, can bring up a lot of different emotions. I've especially found in my own experience being neurodivergent that sometimes it can be really frustrating to feel like I'm right back at the same place, but you never really are. So in this brief video, I wanted to just do some musing on the concept of return, and I will invite you to grab yourself some water or a beverage of some sort and to join me, and let me know in the comments what your thoughts are on this topic. If you're new here, hi, my name is Avery, and I help justice-aligned, neurodivergent, and nerdy humans to cultivate ease and self-trust for growing into our emerging future. I'll also note, if you're new here, you may notice that I get out of breath a lot. I have long COVID and have been having a lot of lung challenges, which is part of why you haven't seen me as much on YouTube lately. It's a harder platform when I'm out of breath, so just please understand that. And also, just a reminder that you can always check out my newsletter, link in the description below. Try to send it out a couple times a month to let you know what's going on. I do some exclusive writing there, and also I do links to everything that's on this channel and on my blog. So when I don't have the lung capacity to be on YouTube, you can read me typing there on similar topics. So want to encourage you to subscribe below. And yeah, part of why I wanted to actually do this a little chat about return is it's an excuse to explain that yeah, I kind of like disappeared for a little bit of a holiday break and then it didn't come back, and part of why is because I've been noticing around my own process, right, of recording videos, that return is sometimes like particularly hard, I think. If you're in some sort of a flow or you have a rhythm and then you have to come back to it, it might be like putting it down gave you some relief. You know, I often find this when I am not here for a little while, that it's not that I'm like done with or ready to release the channel. It's just that I'll have these periods where there's a little bit of relief of just like I don't have to think about it every week and don't have to worry about it. And sometimes I think maybe particularly with an autistic brain, that putting like a hard line on something can be really nice to just say I'm not doing it right now. It's just not happening. And so one of the emotions that sometimes happens around coming back to it is that you're like, oh man, like getting into the flow. It's like I've got to record videos, but I've also got to potentially make thumbnails. I've got to write descriptions, all the things that go into that, which are pretty minimal for my channel. Part of why I don't have a lot of like high production value here is because I ain't got time for that. So, thank you for bearing with the like same background, always wearing the same sweatshirt. Like, this is just who I am, y'all. But, coming back to even that minimal process is just like, oh man, how do you get the ball rolling? Like, I've actually recorded quite a lot of videos in the past couple months, and it's more about the posting process. So you may notice that some of the videos on this channel are going to be old, and I'm going to try not to release things that are not relevant anymore. However, one of the blocks to posting has been having the spoons to watch the video to see whether it's relevant anymore. So I may just say fuck it and post some videos on this channel and hope that it's not like I'm talking about here in December or whatever. And if I am, you'll be okay with that. So that's one tip I have for this, like, if your return is around processes or habits, is to like let yourself do the minimum viable, not spend a whole lot of time on editing or not spend a whole lot of time on the bells and whistles, and just like kind of get back into the flow in some way. A lot of neurodivergent folks like tend to have struggles around inconsistency, and I've done a video on this channel about inconsistency, and I don't actually think there's anything wrong with inconsistency. I think often it can be really healthy for us to learn ways to be inconsistent that feel good for us. But sometimes what that means is that, you'll have a period of time where you're really focused on one thing, and then the other thing will sweep back in. And as you align with kind of seasons of your life and when things feel like they're really moving and things feel like they don't, you might find that stuff just drops off, right? You were, having a lot of, like, this happens a lot with creative projects for me, like you have a lot of passion, and I'm like writing. I've been writing so much to 80%. It's almost like I'm just laughing at myself. I've got like 20 blog posts that are 80% done because for whatever reason, I have the inspiration and energy and interest to write the first 80%, but I've not been in the space to do the last 20. I think I'm just aware of that like for me, the energy of initiating a thing, recording a video, writing a post, whatever, is a very different energy from posting it, from scheduling, from editing, from those kind of like, detail-oriented things. So it may be that one season I can do a lot of creative output, but not a lot of refinement, and then another season it's the other way around. So I think making space and space for that, can be really helpful to like trust that it will come back around. And that's part of the thing about return. We know that things aren't really linear, but it can feel, I think a lot of the emotions that can come up around returning to something are, one, like, is this the right thing? Similar to when you start a new thing, when you come back to something, some of those same questions are going to come up. If you come back to a relationship, somebody you hadn't been hanging out with much, it's sort of similar to when you first met them and you were deciding, do I want to hang out with them? You might be asking yourself similar questions. If you're coming back to a project, it's like you're coming back to some of the same questions. You're a little more familiar with the thing, but it still can feel a little bit like it's new. I think that, so that's one thing is like, just the like uncertainty of like, do I really want to get back into it? Especially if the break did feel like a relief, especially if, like now you're like used to the break and maybe that whatever the thing is, like you like it or it's good for you or it's healthy. I have this a lot with social stuff. I just have periods where I don't really want to social. And then when I have to get back to social, I'm like, I know I'm unhealthy because I'm not social. But good God, is it suddenly much harder to be social. Having had a long period of time where I'm not socializing the way I used to since 2020, if I ever get back to that level of socialization, I'm sure my social skills are going to suck. It's not going to feel good. But also, like, I still have the need and I still ultimately like want to get to the other side of that. So that's like one thing I've noticed. Another thing I've noticed about the dynamics of return is that, I find that emotions come up for me a lot around self-doubt and sometimes a feeling of inevitability. I think sometimes it really does feel like whatever reason you left the thing before it was complete, because if you're returning to something, you're saying that it wasn't complete, that you want to come back to it, right? Whatever reason you left that thing to start with, you're kind of, it's like, oh man, I have to like trust again. I have to get back into it and believe that I can, whether it's get to the finish line, be engaged with it. It's useful to know too, like why are you re-engaging and like what are you re-engaging for? Because some things don't have a finish line and some things are about being present with it, other things, so I think like even when you're looking back on the first time you engage with whatever it is, asking like, is your mind seeing that as a failure? If it's a habit, for example, it's an easy example, right, is with habits, like a lot of times if you fell off, you're like, oh, well, that was a failure. And so now I'm restarting and my goal is to not fall off. And so it's a failure again. Well, no, I don't think so. I actually think that like each time you come back, you're building your resilience to come back to it. And habits are something we have to return to over and over for our whole lives. I mean, even when something becomes totally default, we'll probably have really disruptive periods where it'll fall off. We have to come back to it. So normalizing that and normalizing that return is like a natural part of the process that you come back to. If it's something like a relationship and you haven't been seeing somebody for a while and then you do want to see them, like hopefully it's a little different. Hopefully relationships aren't like all goal oriented, but sometimes we do tend to think that like a longer relationship is always better or being around a person is always better. And so we can kind of ask ourselves, like, what is it that we get from the relationship? And when we return to the relationship, or to like intensifying a relationship, spending more time in a relationship with someone. What is our purpose for that? And it may be that, like, that purpose, of course, evolves and changes. Relationships are very dynamic. They involve people. They're not just like check it off on a box. But it might be that there's something that you really need a relationship for right now in your life. And maybe in 3 months, you won't need that. And the other person will kind of go a different direction. And that's okay. Like, not seeing that as a failure either. So that's like another thing is, acknowledging and seeing those emotions that you might be having around kind of feeling like it's going to, like, your effort is doomed, or the same pattern will repeat when you come back to it. I like to address that by remembering that things aren't linear and that, you're not actually coming back to the same spot. So it's not like you're actually starting from scratch. You're coming back to whatever it is with more knowledge, with more experience. And even, we don't even have to say more, you just say in a different place in your life, a different age, a different, if you've ever heard somebody talk about how like certain books hit them in a very different way when they were 20 versus when they were 40, or certain movies, I think it's a lot like that. Like, experiences, right, hit us a lot different at different points in our lives. Different things we're prioritizing, etc. So, I think we can set ourselves up for expectation of how something's going to feel based on how it felt before. But also, realizing that even if it feels like you're playing out a pattern and you're playing out the same pattern, you're doing it from a different angle and you're absorbing new things. And so just allowing that to be a thing that you're open to, a thing that you're open to learning, I think can be really helpful. When I think about return, I'm kind of talking about the nature of time and how, it's not linear. It is kind of a spiral. I think for a lot of neurodivergent people, there's this theory of monotropism, and particularly with autism, but I think other neurodivergencies as well, of like singularity to focus, or sort of like zooming in on a particular focus, often because it's too overwhelming to focus on everything around us, so we have to kind of zoom. And for me, it's like there's that plus inertia, is that I get kind of in a groove, and I feel like I really like want to finish that groove, and then I get to another groove. And so for me, it's like time can feel kind of fragmented. There's a period where I'll be on YouTube a lot, and then I'll just disappear, and then I'll come back. You may have noticed this. I've been around for a while. It's like I'll be real consistent for like 3 months or 6 months or even a year, and then I'll just like disappear for a few months, and then I'll come back, and then I'll go away, and then I'll come back. And they really like normalize this, by like setting expectations with the people in our lives. Not saying like every time, okay, this time I'm going to be weekly posts forever. Like, if that has never happened in your life, it probably isn't going to happen this time. Instead saying, I'm here when I can be and when I'm called, and, I'm not when I'm not. That's okay. It's okay to like let things kind of wax and wane, and allow that. There's an element too, I think, more spiritually, if I think of the concept of return. And return is something that, so I work a lot with the idea of remembering. So remembering, in your brain, past, right? But also remembering, so becoming a member again. I sometimes conceptualize my work, and I'll talk about like remembering in self, and remembering in community, and remembering in land, remembering in ancestry. It's basically a combination of, I'm becoming part of the whole again. I'm becoming a member. And that naturally happens, or is part of, or is really like intertwined with memory, and how we tell stories, and how we conceptualize ourselves in alignment to other things. So I think return has a lot to do as well with memory and how we evaluate our past experiences. So whether we see something as a failure, whether we see something as the best thing we've ever had. Sometimes it can happen the other way too, where it's like, wow, I'm really like idealizing this relationship I have, and then I come back to it and I'm like, oh, and that might be because that person's changed, I've changed, we're in different places. It also can be that like our hindsight memory is a little like, was it really like that? I don't know. So, you know, you also can have like really high expectations, and then when things go differently, you know, like giving yourself space and grace for that. Knowing that our memories are not ever static, that they're like always evolving, they're always reshaping. I don't know if you've ever had this experience where you, your take on something drastically changes over time, even if you've had no interaction with the pieces of that memory, right? Like a relation, I mean, I've had this before with like in a relationship I had, that as things about me changed and things about my understanding myself changed, I was like, oh, that relationship was way less healthy than I thought it was. Is that true? I don't know. I mean, that's how I perceive it. And I can see patterns and I can go, oh, I think I was probably acting really unhealthy. But I also can't perfectly remember the words of every interaction we have. I can't remember how that person was. I can barely remember how that person looks like, right? 10 years, 15 years down the line. And that's okay, because like the relevance of that memory to me now, in the present moment, is really what matters. And I love the non-linearity of time. I love, I'm a Pisces sun, Pisces Mercury, Pisces midheaven, a very Pisces person. I really like the idea that everything's kind of an ocean in the past, the present, the future. Like they're all happening. And it's not some sort of weird sci-fi thing. It's just that like we're always interacting with all those at once, right? So we're always like, again, our memory, like the actual event that happened in the past isn't here right now, but what is here is our memory of it. And so the past is alive in that form, and also the future is alive in our hopes and our dreams and our visions and our plans, and where we're sitting right now, which we often is the one we don't think about very much. The present moment is also here. So like, how are we integrating all of that? Return to anything, I think, is about the integration of those three things. It's about the emotions that we carry, the stories we carry, the narrative, the language we use to describe the past thing we're returning to, how we even conceptualize that as a thing, what category, how we categorize it, how we think of it as like part of our different journeys or stories. That gets integrated in with what we're going through right now, our accumulated wisdom, our experience, our moods, our environment, our relationships. Think of your pre-pandemic and post-pandemic selves, right? It's just an example, right? You might have a very different orientation to safety, relationship, space, privacy, security, community. Probably changed pretty drastically with a pivot point somewhere around 2020 for most people. And so like, those are both you, but they're two different selves. So whatever your kind of current orientation is, and then you're integrating this future that obviously hasn't happened yet. And I don't do like predictive, anything, astrology, tarot. Like I don't try to predict the future, but I think we are in relationship to it in the sense that like our priorities, our focuses, everything right now, our dreams, our hopes, the actions we take based on what we think is going to happen, like very much influences what actually happens. And so even though return seems like we're talking about in the present, coming to something that we did in the past and bringing it back into our lives, we're also making either a commitment, you could say, or just dipping a toe or whatever into the future. I could easily say, oh, I'm going to get rid of this YouTube channel, and then there would be no future of this YouTube channel, right? So here I am saying, look, there's a future. It's a very like simple, example of that. I've been coming back, returning to a lot of like spiritual practices, but in small ways, and I've noticed that the more I try to like make it a big thing, if I'm coming back to practice, the easier it is to feel guilt or shame around like, oh, my practice doesn't look like it used to, or like I'll remember the like vibe I was in a few years ago and be like, how do I come back to that vibe? And the answer is kind of, you can never come back to that vibe, one, and that vibe always lives within you too. So the sum total of your experiences is always in you. You can always access that. There was something there that you don't lose, that you can touch again. But what it looks like might be different. How it feels might be different. The practices that I do might be different. The way I relate to them is probably different. One thing I love about astrology is that I don't think you have one birth chart. Even just looking at like literally your natal chart, nothing else, no synastry, no progressions, just like chart. that chart, right? That came out the day you were born. New chart just dropped. That chart, you can look at it at different points of your life. It's going to always look different, right? You learn the language of astrology. You look at it in 2 years. You look at it. You're always going to focus on different things. And some of that, sure, is like your interaction with the transiting planets, progressions, everything. But like, I think all of those things, all those movements in the sky, to me, what they really represent when it comes to natal chart practice is that they represent like influences on you that change your orientation to your own chart. And so I'm going to see my chart at 85 way different than I might have seen my chart. Well, I didn't know astrology at 12 if I had. Yeah. Cycles. Okay, so I told you it would be a short video. It's been 20 minutes. That's my definition of short. If you're new here, hi, I'm Avery. I ramble. But yeah, I would love for you to, one, take a look at the link below, sign up to the newsletter. That way it won't be long dependent when you hear from me. But also, how are you feeling about return? This is a year where I think a lot of people are coming more into the external world, just like spiritually. There's certain things metaphysically that like indicate this might be more a year of movement or emergence or, external presence than last year was. And so as we're doing that, maybe a lot of us are returning to things that we just hadn't really had the space for in 2023. Are you feeling any of that energy? How does that feel? What's your relationship to coming back to things? What have you learned? Do you have a retrograde in your natal chart? This is a very retrograde energy, what I'm talking about right now. Yeah, so those are my questions. If you have thoughts, leave a comment below. If there are things you want me to talk about, leave a comment below. And look forward to a batch of videos that may or may not be relevant right now that I recorded in the last couple of months, which I will be trying to pace out on this channel, but if I don't, I'm gonna be gentle with myself because that's my vibe. All right, have a great day or night wherever you are, and we'll see you in the next video.